They say the sea keeps secrets better than the grave. But what if the sea doesn't just bury truth? What if it chooses who suffers for it? For generations, there's been a name whispered along the West African coastlines. Not shouted, not sung, just whispered like a warning to those who dare sleep too close to the waves. That name is Olokun. You might have heard her called a goddess, a spirit, a deity. But those words don't even begin to touch the depth of what she is. Because Olokun isn't just a myth. She's a force title, ancient and terrifyingly intelligent. She waits beneath the surface of the ocean, not asleep, but watching. And when she rises, kingdoms tremble. This isn't a bedtime story. This is a reckoning. Welcome to Folk Tales Cinema, where we don't just retell legends. We exhume them. We peel back the soft, comforting layers and reveal the raw nerve of fear, power, and history underneath. Before we go deeper, do me a favor if you love stories rooted in truth, myth, in the thin line between madness and magic. Then like this video, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me if Olokun offered you wealth, fame, or power, but in exchange, you'd never sleep peacefully again. Would you take her gift? I'll be in the comments with you because that choice, that decision, is where this story begins. Let's dive in. Long before maps claimed to understand the oceans, before colonizers drew their crooked lines across continents, the people of the West African coast already knew that something ancient ruled the water. Olokun. She was never seen the same way twice. To some, she appeared as a woman with silver hair that floated like seafoam and skin so pale it shimmered blue in moonlight. To others, she was no more than a shadow in the surf, a voice that echoed during storms, a pressure you felt in your chest when you stared into the waves too long. But here's what every village, every sailor, and every priest agreed on. Olokun gave generously and punished mercilessly. Entire towns swore their prosperity came from her favor. Their fishermen returned with boats heavy with rare fish. Their women dreamed of treasure and woke up to it buried at the roots of their doorsteps. Merchants traveling from Europe and Arabia brought gold to trade, and somehow it was always the Olokun-worshipping tribes who profited most. But then came the madness. It started quietly. A man who once spoke eloquently now babbled to himself beside the shore, claiming Olokun spoke through the bubbles in the tide. A midwife found dancing in the market at dawn, naked, laughing, hands covered in seawater. Children who refused to sleep, eyes wide, staring into corners, whispering that she's in the walls. At first, people blamed sickness, spirits, curses. But as the incident spread, so did one whisper. Olokun is angry. The priest tried to soothe her. They offered yams, goats, pearls, blood. But the waves kept rising. The wind tore roofs from homes. Crops near the shore rotted overnight. One king, proud and greedy, outlawed her worship altogether. He called her priests liars, her followers deluded. He built walls to block the sea and declared Olokun powerless. His kingdom flooded within the week. The river swelled with salt. His air drowned in the palace pool. Fishermen dragged nets full of severed limbs. The people fled inland. And the king? Legend says he wandered into the sea himself, begging her forgiveness, and was never seen again. That was the last time any ruler banned Olokun. To understand her, you have to let go of logic. She's not just water. She's what water remembers. She's the sorrow of drowned slaves, shackled and tossed overboard, their spirits still whispering beneath the waves. She's the scream of women taken across the Atlantic, forced to birth nations in silence. She's the pulse of forgotten names, crushed under colonial boots. But she's also abundance, wealth, beauty, the divine feminine in its most unfiltered form. She is both dream and nightmare, gift and curse, always balancing the scales. Olokun doesn't take what you don't offer, but when you ask something of her, she will always take something back. And that's where this story truly begins. In a fishing village not far from what is now the Benin coast, there lived a woman named Abeni. She was known for her beauty, yes, but more than that, for her silence. She spoke rarely, smiled even less, and never once wept. It was said she'd been born during a storm, the sea itself rising up in fury as her mother screamed through labor. The midwife who delivered her died the next day, found face down in a puddle with water still in her lungs. They called Abini Olokun's child, but that was just a name until the drought came. No rain, no fish. Crops yellowed in the soil like brittle bones. The elders wept, the children starved, and the priests, desperate, called for a sacrifice. It was Abini who volunteered. No one dared stop her. She walked to the shore alone, carrying nothing but a piece of blue cloth the color of Olokun. She stepped into the waves and vanished. Not a splash, not a scream. Gone. The villagers mourned her, built a shrine, offered prayers. They expected nothing. But the next morning, the sky broke open with rain. The tide came back full, and when the fishermen returned, they carried nets bursting with fish and pearls tangled in the rope. They rejoiced until the dreams began. One by one, the villagers began hearing a song in their sleep. A woman's voice, haunting, beautiful, drenched in sorrow. She spoke in riddles. You eat what you did not bleed for. She gave herself to me. You sold her for rain. You will owe me always. Some villagers stopped sleeping altogether. Some clawed at their ears, screaming, trying to shut the voice out. Others walked into the ocean and never returned. The high priest consulted ancient texts, desperate for answers. He read of a promise, a prophecy that Olokun would one day send a bride to the surface, not to be worshipped, but to collect, to take what was hers. And the villagers realized Abini wasn't just a sacrifice. She was a messenger, and she was coming back. Years passed. The story of Abini faded into myth, then legend, then little more than an eerie song passed down to scare children away from the water. But one season, after a violent monsoon, something washed ashore. It was a woman, alive, but wrong. Her skin shimmered blue in the light. Her eyes were pale, unreadable. And when the villagers tried to speak to her, she only smiled, her lips never parting. The elders wanted to cast her out. The children were drawn to her, and the priests fell silent. She stayed in the village for 7 days. On the 7th, the ocean came inland. Not in waves and tide, a slow, relentless creep. Water in the wells, water in the beds, fish on the rooftops. When the villagers fled, the woman watched smiling as the sea swallowed her home. She didn't drown. She walked back into the water like it was calling her home. And from that day on, that village was never rebuilt. Only the shrine remained half submerged, half forgotten, whispering her name. Olokun. This is just the beginning. Because Olokun doesn't live in one village or one coast. Her presence is woven into the very fabric of African water worship. Her legends stretch from Yoruba land to the Caribbean, from the coastal rituals of Nigeria to the voodoo ceremonies of Haiti and Brazil. Some call her La Sirene. Others say she rules over the drowned. But everyone agrees, Olokun does not forget. And if you hear her calling from the deep, you better be certain what you're willing to give in return. Before cities ever rose, before kings ever ruled, before the first drumbeat echoed through the forests of Ife or the palaces of Benin, there was nothing but water. Not rivers, not lakes, endless, formless water. It stretched in every direction, black, silent, and bottomless. Not a single star reflected in it. No wind stirred its surface. No shore gave it meaning. It simply existed, vast, watching, waiting. From that silent void, something ancient began to stir. Not a creature, not a god as we understand them, but a presence, a consciousness, a being with no fixed shape, no face, no skin to bind it. It moved like thought. It pulsed like a tide, and it began to dream. That dream became Olokun. In the creation stories of the Yoruba people, keepers of one of West Africa's most profound and intricate spiritual traditions. Olokun holds a place unlike any other. She is not just one among many gods, she is the foundation they rose from. Where other deities rule land, sky, and fire, Olokun was there long before land existed, before air was separated from sea. She didn't need the earth to stand on, she was the abyss beneath all things. She dwells in the very deepest parts of the ocean, the kind of depths human eyes have never seen, where sunlight cannot reach, where pressure crushes bones and time forgets itself. And in those black waters, she waits. She listens. And sometimes, she answers. But her voice doesn't come in words. It comes in dreams, in madness, in visions that drag you from sleep, breathless, soaked in salt water, not knowing whether you've drowned or been born again. Ask 10 priests who Olokun is, and you'll hear 10 different stories. Some say she is a woman regal, adorned in beads and flowing blue robes, her hair braided like ocean waves, her face veiled by mist. Others claim Olokun is a man powerful, silent, and commanding the sea like a general commands armies. But most will tell you this: Olokun is beyond gender. She is not bound by the limits of flesh. She takes on the form she chooses, or no form at all. Sometimes she is both, sometimes neither. She appears how she needs to appear, not for herself, but for you. Because Olokun is not interested in appearances. She is interested in truth. The raw, unvarnished truths we bury about what we want, what we fear, what we will sacrifice to get what we crave. Wealth, power, beauty, knowledge, control. Those are her currencies. And they come at a price. To those who honored her, Olokun offered untold prosperity. Merchants who prayed to her returned from sea with ships heavy with coral, cowries, and gold dust. Kingdoms that built shrines in her name flourished with trade and influence. She granted dreams that revealed hidden knowledge, secrets of healing, of politics, of war. Entire empires rose on the back of her blessings. But Olokun's gifts are like the sea itself, capricious, unpredictable, and dangerous when taken for granted. Because when the sea gives, it does so without warning. And when it takes, it does not apologize. The madness of the blessed. The most devout worshippers of Olokun were not always the most blessed. Some became untethered. They saw visions they could not explain, heard voices that followed them beyond prayer, woke with salt on their lips and blood beneath their fingernails. They spoke of dreams too vivid to be dreams, of cities beneath the waves, of glowing fish that whispered names, of drowning, only to wake up gasping beside dry firewood. These were not the dreams of ordinary sleep. These were visitations. In many tales, Olokun does not speak through language. She speaks through knowing, through madness, through the unraveling of ego and the reshaping of reality. Some call it a gift. Others say it's a slow kind of death. In some stories, Olokun is said to be married to Obatala, the Orisha of creation, wisdom, and purity, the sculptor of human beings, the molder of form. But even in these tales, she remains sovereign. She does not belong to him. She chooses him. Where Obatala shapes the land, Olokun holds dominion over everything the earth cannot touch. She exists in the deep, the real deep, where light itself gets swallowed. This is not just metaphor. This is power. Because Olokun is not just the deity of the physical sea. She rules over the unconscious, over the unknown, over the parts of the human soul that even we don't understand. Wow. When people cry out in grief too deep for words, it's said Olokun is there, weeping with them or waiting for them to drown in it. She governs the emotional abyss, and no one escapes that pull. To understand why Olokun is so feared and so revered, you have to look at history not just through the lens of myth, but trauma. During the transatlantic slave trade, thousands, possibly millions of Africans were thrown overboard during the brutal Middle Passage. Chained, starving, beaten, they were cast into the sea like waste, their names erased, their stories stolen. But in Yoruba cosmology, nothing truly disappears. The spirits of those drowned did not vanish. They descended, and they found her. Olokun, the mother of the deep. It is believed she took them in, that she gave them new form, new meaning, that they became her messengers, her guardians, her rage. In the diaspora across the Caribbean, Brazil, Haiti, and the Americas, Olokun survived. In secret, in syncretized rituals, in whispered prayers, in ceremonies cloaked in Catholic symbols. Her name was changed, her face was hidden, but her presence remained. Every wave crashing against the coast was a reminder. The ocean remembers what the world forgets. Many have sought Olokun's favor. Even today, people still perform rituals to gain her blessing. They place offerings at the shoreline, blue beads, silver coins, saltwater-soaked cloth. Some enter trance states to connect with her. Others dream of her unbidden. But her gifts are never simple. Take wealth, for example. Yes, she may bring you riches, but with it comes exposure, attention, envy, the fear of loss. She may show you truths no one else sees, but then leave you unable to unsee them. She is not cruel, but she is balanced. And balance can feel brutal when you've spent your life on uneven ground. The most dangerous thing about Olokun is not her fury, it's her stillness. Because Olokun is calm the way the sea is calm right before it devours a city. She can smile at you through a glassy surface, lull you into a sense of peace, and then pull you under with no warning. Entire cultures have built myths around this idea that what appears tranquil is often hiding something vast, cold, and unknowable beneath it. That's why Olokun is worshipped with respect, not just love. You don't worship her like you do a mother. You worship her like you do a storm. One of the oldest oral traditions tells of a priest who tried to bind Olokun's power to bottle the ocean's gifts for himself. He carved runes into stone, recited forbidden names, poured sacred oil into the waves, and demanded she make him king of all waters. The sea did not rise. It sank. The tide pulled back for hours. Fish writhed on the sand. Birds vanished from the sky. And then it came. A wall of water taller than trees, screaming with the voices of the drowned. The priest was never seen again. His village reduced to driftwood. Even the name of that land was lost. To speak, it was forbidden. Because Olokun does not take kindly to demands. She answers only to need, real need, and she always collects. Long ago, before modern maps carved names into coasts and kingdoms, there was a place the wind knew by song and the sea by sorrow. Elif, a coastal village nestled between cliffs and mangrove, where the waves could speak if you listened long enough. It was here, under the breath of a restless tide, that something began to change. The sea, Elif's eternal neighbor, grew strange. Fishermen, hardened by storms and silence, began returning with empty boats. Not just without fish, but without memory. Nets vanished. Oars snapped mid-row. Some came back babbling, eyes wide with terror, unable to speak a single word that made sense. Others simply sat, mouths closed tight, as if fear had sewn their lips shut. They pointed to the horizon, trembling. The elders of Elif gathered in the dark of night, murmuring beneath oil lamps. They knew it was happening again. Olokun was stirring. She didn't rise with fury, no tidal wave, no quake, only whispers through water and signs the soul could feel. There was a girl, Adesua. Born to the village herbalist, she had long walked between the seen and unseen. Skilled in midwifery, she coaxed new life into the world with gentle hands. But it was the sea that called to her. Each morning before dawn, she wandered the shoreline barefoot, collecting herbs, stones, secrets. Villagers often whispered about her strangeness, her quiet. Some feared it, others envied it, but all agreed Adesua was different. One morning, as the sky hovered between night and day, Adesua bent to gather seaweed at the water's edge. That's when she saw it, a shimmer beneath the waves, red coral beads, strung tightly with cowries that seemed to glow from within. A necklace, half buried in the sand, half cradled by the tide. Something in her chest tightened. A pull. Not fear, not desire. Recognition. Like a name you forgot you knew. As she reached out and touched it, the sea moved. Not just the surface. The air shifted. The tide rolled backward in a strange ripple, though the wind was still. Then came a sound, not loud, not soft, a low thrumming hum that seemed to rise from the bones of the world. And then, the voice, Adesua, her name spoken not with breath, but with knowing. Her hand jerked back, but the necklace had already latched itself to her skin. It clung like warmth, like memory. She didn't run. She just stood there listening. And the voice, hers, not hers, settled inside her like a stone dropped in a deep well. That night the dreams began. She saw a palace beneath the sea, walls built from coral and bone, floors that shimmered like starlight on water. And at its center, on a throne of silver and shells, sat Olokun. Her hair moved like seaweed in a current, her eyes vast whirlpools of unspoken truth. Around her danced spirits, beautiful, haunting. Golden skin cloaked in robes of blue and white, their faces hidden behind masks carved from pearl. "The land has forgotten me," Olokun said. Her voice was not angry, not yet. "But you will remember, bring them to the water. They must offer, or they will drown in their own greed." Adesua awoke before dawn, sweating. The necklace was still on her neck, only now it pulsed, like a heartbeat. The air smelled of salt, and far across the sea a storm brewed like a bruise spreading across the sky. By midday she stood beneath the great baobab at the heart of the village. Her voice trembled as she spoke, the necklace gleaming under the sun. "I dreamed of Olokun," she said. "She has spoken. She has warned us." A hush fell. Some villagers looked at her with awe. Others turned away, muttering. One elder, Oyanlola, stepped forward. His beard was gray with age and his eyes were sharp with memory. "We've angered her before," he murmured. "There was a year when the fish vanished, and the waves swallowed 3 canoes in one night. We gave a blood offering to calm her. Only then did the sea return to sleep." Others weren't so quick to remember. "She's a child," someone scoffed. "Dreams are dreams. She wants attention, not truth. She's bewitched." But the ocean didn't care who believed. That night, the wind howled like a wounded thing. The sea clawed at the cliffs, and the rain didn't fall. It struck. Boats were torn from their moorings. Palm trees snapped like twigs. And when dawn came, half the beach had been eaten by the tide. Adesua walked among the wreckage, barefoot, silent. The necklace glowed faintly in the mist. And now, even the doubters began to whisper. Something had awakened, and it had called her by name. The days that followed were restless. Elif was no longer a village. It was a question. Every home became a shrine of caution, meals offered with muttered prayers, doorways swept with herbs of protection, children kept from the waves, as if the sea itself had grown teeth. Adesua, however, felt no fear. The fear had passed. What remained was certainty. Each night the dreams returned, each more vivid than the last. Olokun spoke not in riddles, but in truths cloaked in water, that the people had forgotten their promises, that Elif had grown fat on salt, but gave nothing in return, that if the village would not remember, the sea would take what it was owed. And so on the 7th night, Adesua lit a fire at the edge of the beach. She waited until the moon hung heavy above the water and called out to the village. "Come," she said, her voice low and steady. "Bring your offerings, bring your songs, or bring your dead." At first no one moved. Then Elder Oyanlola stepped forward, holding a carved bowl filled with kola nuts and ground pepper, whispering an ancient chant. Then came the fisherman who had lost his brother to the sea, then a mother who had lost her child to a fever during a stormy night. One by one, they approached. With trembling hands, they placed their offerings at Adesua's feet. They gathered in a circle, and Adesua began to speak. "This is not for me," she said, eyes glowing in the firelight. "This is for the one who holds the sea in her fist. For Olokun, remember her name, Speak it, honor it, or she will unmake all that you call yours. As if on cue, a wave crashed far louder than it should have, rolling closer than the tide had reached in weeks. The villagers gasped and stepped back. Adesua did not move. She stepped forward, alone, and placed the necklace into the fire. The flames turned blue, then white, then vanished. The fire went out, but the wind died too. The night grew still, eerily so. And from the darkness came a sound like weeping or singing. And the sea, for the first time in days, was calm. By dusk, the sea gave its answer, not with words, but with fury. Waves thundered against the shoreline, hurling foam like white fire across the beaches. No wind stirred the trees, yet the ocean moved like a beast unchained. Dead fish, silver and gleaming, were scattered along the sand, eyes wide, mouths gaping in silent horror. The scent of salt hung thick in the air, tinged with something older, something ancient. A warning, one the villagers could no longer deny. That night, under a swollen moon, they gathered at the shore in solemn silence. No songs, no drums, just breath and fear. Adesua stood barefoot in the surf, the tide licking at her ankles like a whisper from something that remembered her name. Her hands trembled as she dipped a calabash bowl into the darkened water, lifted it to the heavens, and spoke, softly, reverently. "Olokun," she whispered, "we have come." The sea stilled. Every ripple froze, as if time itself had paused. Then, from beneath the water, deep beneath, something rose. Not in full, not all at once, but enough. Enough to break the mind's grip on reason. A shape, vast and shifting, towered just beneath the waves. Half seen, half felt, her eyes glowed like stars trapped in ink. Hair or tentacles, it was impossible to say, drifted behind her like a crown, moving with the grace of deep currents. She did not speak, not with a mouth. Her voice surged directly into their minds. A covenant must be renewed. My name must be remembered. I give wealth, but I take what is not offered freely. The villagers fell to their knees. Some cried. Some simply bowed their heads to the sand. And in that moment, the salt covenant was reborn. From then on, the people of Ilif returned to their forgotten rituals. The first fish of every catch, the first salt of every harvest, the first bead of every craft, all placed in woven baskets and carried to the shore, where they were floated out into the sea with whispers and prayers. And the sea, in turn, gave back. The fish returned, the waters calmed, dreams came like messages, visions guiding healers to new herbs, traders to new roots. And Adesua, she became more than a priestess. She became Olokun's chosen. A new hut was built for her near the edge of the sea, where the tide could reach her threshold. There she communed with spirits. She listened to dreams not her own, and interpreted signs from clouds, waves, and bones. Word of her gift traveled across kingdoms. From lands beyond rivers and forests they came. Travelers, nobles, kings, all seeking her blessing. But the blessings had rules. Rules not everyone followed. Years later, a wealthy trader named Okoyoko arrived in Ilif, his robes heavy with gold, his wrists lined with ivory bangles. He laughed at the sea's power, called Olokun a myth. He refused to make offerings, claiming that his success came from his own cunning. The sea was just water, he said, and salt was for the weak. He loaded his grand ship with spices, metals, and 40 men. They sailed off at sunrise with banners raised and drums beating. They never returned. Some say Olokun dragged the ship down to her palace below, turning their laughter into bubbles. Others whisper that she let them live, but not whole, that they wander beneath the ocean, rich and mad, clutching coins that melt to water in their hands. Still, on certain nights, when the tide is low and the moon hangs heavy like a pearl, villagers swear they see a woman on the shore. Her eyes glow faintly blue. Her necklace hums. She doesn't speak. She just listens to the waves, to the silence between them, waiting. But the madness didn't end with Okoyoko. It began subtly. Those who spent too much time near the water after dark began behaving strangely. One man, a palm wine tapper named Taiwo, was found at dawn kneeling in the tide, whispering to invisible figures. His mouth was full of sand. He kept muttering, "The coins are watching. The sea remembers." He never spoke again. In a nearby village, a woman obsessed with collecting cowries was discovered building a throne from shells and driftwood. When asked what she was doing, she simply said, "She needs a seat to rest before the storm." The elders turned once more to Adisua. They begged for answers. The sea had been generous, too generous. More fish than ever, beads that shimmered brighter, dreams that revealed secrets lost to time. But now, there was a cost. Adisua returned to the shore. She sat on the black sand, drawing symbols in salt with her fingertips. The moon watched, the tide rose, the waves kissed her brow. She slipped into trance. In her vision, she was beneath the sea, not floating, not swimming, but suspended in a world without gravity. Spirits passed by her, their eyes like lanterns, their limbs made of water. At the center of it all sat Olokun, upon her throne of coral and bone. "Why do you take their minds?" Adisua asked. "Because they forget the balance," Olokun replied. "They want gold, but not reverence. They wish to look into the deep, but refuse to bow." Then Olokun showed her visions of cities, grand, beautiful, now sunken. Palaces swallowed whole, markets silenced by the crush of waves. Civilizations that reached too far, offered too little, forgot too quickly. One by one, they disappeared beneath coral crowns and sand-stained thrones. When Adisua awoke, salt water spilled from her mouth. Her eyes shimmered with truths too deep for language. She warned the people. "Olokun does not punish with fire," she said. "She drowns with beauty. She seduces the soul. If you take without giving, if you worship the gift but ignore the giver, you will fall in love with the ocean's secrets and never return." But not everyone listened. A group of young men from a distant kingdom, brimming with pride and defiance, journeyed to Elif. They came not for blessing, but conquest. They had found scrolls, old and forbidden, that claimed Olokun's spirit could be trapped in a sacred jar. They sailed out with the jar in tow. They never came back. A week later, a whirlpool appeared off the coast. It spun with haunting grace, too perfect to be natural. It remained for 7 nights. On the 8th morning, something washed ashore. The jar shattered, and within it, a human eye still open, gazing skyward. That kingdom abandoned their shoreline. No one speaks their name to this day. Even Adisua began to change. Her hair grew silver and long, like strands of sea foam. Her voice deepened, echoing strangely, like it passed through water even when she spoke in air. She spoke less to people, more to waves. Her eyes, distant, knowing. One evening, without word or warning, she walked into the sea. She did not drown. She vanished. Some say she returned to Olokun. Others believe she became part of her. Either way, her name became legend, her shrine still visited by fishermen and travelers, seeking favor from the sea. To this day, when tides grow strange and winds whisper secrets, elders along the coast still say, "Olokun is speaking. Are you listening?" But who is Olokun truly? In Yoruba cosmology, Olokun is the ruler of the deepest ocean, the force beneath the waves. She is mystery. She is madness. She is wealth. Some see her as female, others as male. But many believe Olokun transcends gender entirely. She is not a person, but a presence, a current that moves through time, through spirit, through salt. She holds the secrets of creation, the depth of intuition, the madness of unchecked desire. Her power lies not in thunder or flame, but in seduction, in silence, in dreams. She does not shout, she whispers. She offers treasure, but always with a test. What will you give in return? What part of yourself will you lose in pursuit of what glitters? In traditional Yoruba practice, Offerings to Olokun include white cloth, silver, perfumes, and salt water, all symbols of purity, clarity, and connection to the spirit world. Her priests and priestesses are often dreamers, healers, prophets. But their gifts walk a narrow path, one where insight and madness blur. This myth is not just an echo of the past. It lives, it breathes. When enslaved Africans were taken across the Atlantic, Olokun traveled with them, not in chains, but in spirit. Her worship survived in Brazil, in the Caribbean, in Candomblé and Santeria. Among African Americans rediscovering their roots, she is still called upon. And even now in small villages across West Africa, fishermen whisper her name before casting nets. Healers set bowls of water before her shrine. Mothers teach daughters how to speak to waves. Because the sea remembers. Because salt does not lie. Because Olokun still waits. So now you've heard the tale, or at least as much of it as any mortal ever truly will. But tell me, what would you do if the ocean whispered your name? Would you follow its call, or would you turn away pretending you didn't hear? Because the truth is, the sea never forgets. Long after kingdoms rise and fall, long after memory fades and cities crumble into dust, the tide continues its slow, eternal song, pulling back what was taken or what was never offered. That is the legacy of Olokun. She doesn't need to shout to be heard. Her voice hides in silence, slips between dreams, hums behind your thoughts in the quietest hour of the night. And those who ignore her, those who take without offering, those who chase only the glitter, well, they often vanish, not in flame, but in fascination, in beauty, in desire. That's the danger, isn't it? Because Olokun doesn't just drown with water, she drowns with wonder, with everything you ever wanted, until you forget the world above. And maybe that's why this story still lives. Not because it's old, but because it's true. Not in the way facts are true, but in the way feelings are. The kind that sink into your bones and whisper to you every time you stand at the edge of something deep, something unknown, something waiting. So now we ask you, do you believe Olokun still watches from beneath the waves? Have you ever stood by the sea and felt something watching you back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you, your feelings, your interpretations, even your own dreams. And if this tale stirred something in you, if the salt still lingers in your chest, don't let it end here. Like this video to offer your energy back to the story. Subscribe to Folktales Cinema so you never miss a journey into the forgotten realms of myth and spirit. New stories surface every week, haunting, beautiful, powerful. Tap the bell because sometimes the whispers come softly, and you don't want to miss them. And finally, remember, not all treasures are made of gold. Some are made of silence, of dreams, of salt. And as Olokun has always shown us, salt can bless, salt can bind, but salt can also drown. Until next time, keep your feet on the shore, but never forget to listen to the waves. This is Folktales Cinema, where myths live and legends remember.